the Etihad Stadium in the city of Manchester. Two modern titans of the game face off in a battle for the ages. Two managers, decorated with the highest honors that the game has to offer, who have painstakingly and passionately carved their identities into the teams that represent them, each vying for the pride and honor of calling themselves the champions of the English Premier League. Tonight, the defending champions Liverpool take on their title rivals, Manchester City.
Welcome to the League FC. Let's get into it. Let's start off by looking at the recent history of this fixture in the Premier League. Now, each team has won 2, lost 2, and had a 0-0 draw for their name. Now, since we're playing at the Etihad, Manchester City have won 4-0, 2-1, and before that they had a 5-0 win as well. There was that one Champions League game where Liverpool won 2-1 though. Both teams have important players on the injury list at the moment, unfortunately. However, Liverpool have considerably more players there. Virgil van Dijk, Joel Matip, their new superstar Thiago, Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, and most recently, Fabinho. Manchester City do have their primary striker out. Sergio Aguero will be out for the next 2 weeks at least. Now before we move on, if you like what you see, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel out, and while you're doing that, quick like. Maybe share it with a friend. Alright, let's get back into it. Let's take a look at Liverpool and their approach to this game. Now, most recently, Liverpool, we all would remember, had that 7-2 thumping at the hands of Aston Villa. But they followed that up with a good comeback in the Merseyside derby with a 2-2 draw, which they should have won with the goal that was disallowed for offside. And I don't want to remind Liverpool fans of this, but Jordan Pickford did take Virgil van Dijk out for the rest of the season in that game. But all that awfulness aside, Liverpool have had 5 consecutive wins in all competitions and 2 consecutive wins in the Premier League since then. Now, a lot of credit should go to Jurgen Klopp for how he has set up the team and managed to bounce back despite losing who is his most important player, arguably, in Virgil van Dijk. Right now, at this point in his career, Jurgen Klopp, in terms of managing, in terms of motivating, in terms of strategizing, is at the top of his game and has been there for the last 3 years. Right now, Jurgen Klopp is a motivational monster, and the Liverpool team looks so well drilled and so hungry for success, despite the fact that they have won nearly everything that they've had to win in the last couple of years. So what are we looking at in terms of the starting 11 and how they line up? Now, most of this team for me pretty much picks itself. Alisson always starts in goal. For the fullbacks, you'll have Andy Robertson on the left side and Trent Alexander-Arnold on the right side. Even though for you it's probably the other way around. Joe Gomez would surely start in that left centre-back position. In midfield, the guaranteed starters for me is the captain, who is extremely important for Liverpool, Jordan Henderson, and I think Wijnaldum also starts there. And then you have the wingers, obviously. You have Sadio Mane on the left and Mo Salah on the right. Oh, I got it right this time. That leaves us with 3 positions open that we can talk about. Let's start off with that right centre-back spot. Now, Liverpool have had 2 young players starting in that position since the unfortunate injuries to VVD and Fabinho. So those 2 players are Nathaniel Phillips and Reece Williams. Reece Williams started in the midweek game and Nathaniel Phillips started in the last Premier League game that Liverpool played. Now, out of these 2 players, for me, who starts over here would be Nathaniel Phillips, because he just looks a little bit more solid to me. Reece Williams did start against Atlanta in midweek and they did get a clean sheet, but Atlanta did have 9 shots during that game, and with the likes of De Bruyne or Bernardo Silva or Riyad Mahrez coming at you, you don't want a lot of shots being taken against you. So for me, my pick at right center back would be Nathaniel Phillips. Okay, now let's talk about that center mid spot that's left behind. Curtis Jones has been starting for Liverpool in the past few games, and he's been putting in a decent few performances and has earned himself the right to be in that spot, some might argue. But Liverpool are coming up against Manchester City. Now they do have the Naby Keita or Minamino, who are good attacking options, who have reasonable passing ranges, but haven't quite gotten started in the Premier League properly as of yet. So my pick for this position would be James Milner. James Milner is a accomplished, experienced, and very composed centre mid, and Liverpool would need that extra solidity in midfield to cope with Manchester City, because they will be bringing the pressure, because they know that Liverpool are weaker in defence without the likes of Virgil van Dijk and Fabinho and Joel Matip right now. Now on to the striker position. Liverpool fans, I know you have a lot of love for Bobby Firmino. I really like him too. He's very important to how Liverpool play in terms of being just behind the line of defense and midfield and distributing the balls to their inverted wingers and getting Salah and Mane those important goal scoring opportunities. But Diogo Jota has been on fire recently. Coming off the bench, he has scored multiple times, and in midweek, he scored a lovely hat-trick against Atalanta. And you can't overlook that at this level, especially when you're coming up against Manchester City. That front three looks really scary and very potent right now. With the leaky defense that Manchester City have had in the last few games, you would favor those three to score multiple goals against them in this fixture. And that's why I'm putting Diogo Jota over there ahead of Bobby Firmino. Alright, so what about Manchester City? Well, Manchester City haven't been in the best form this season. They have scored only 9 goals in the 6 games that they have played, and for context, that's the same number of goals that Arsenal have scored, and their attack hasn't really gotten going. Manchester City's inconsistent form is quite telling from their results. They had 3 wins, a 3-1 win on opening day and 2-1 wins. And then they had that 5-2 devastation against Leicester City where they lost humiliatingly, I would say, and 2 1-1 draws against teams that would be considered lesser opposition to Manchester City in the likes of Leeds United and West Ham United. After that, they have had to bring in defensive reinforcement after defensive reinforcement because they've been looking frail at the back, and the goals that they've been giving up weren't exactly the goals that you'd be expecting a team that's challenging for the league title to be giving up at this stage. Now, however, there are positives for Manchester City despite all of that. They have had 3 consecutive clean sheets, which is a big step for them, and Ruben Dias is coming into the team, and he looks quite solid as a centre-back partner for Heinrich Laporte. Add to that the fact that most of their core players in midfield and centre defence had gotten a good bit of rest in midweek because they didn't have to play against Olympiacos in the Champions League. Manchester City's starting 11 doesn't quite pick itself like Liverpool's does for a couple of reasons. One is consistency, and the other is just the sheer amount of good players they have in there. Let's start with the obvious ones. Ederson definitely goes in goal. Kyle Walker definitely starts at right back. And left back, it's a bit of a question between Cancelo, Mendy, or Zinchenko. And based on form, for me, I think Zinchenko starts there, and he's a bit more solid of an option than Cancelo at the moment. For the central defensive partnership, I'll probably go for Heinrich Laporte and Ruben Dias, because both of them have looked quite solid. And let's face it, without Virgil van Dijk in the league, Heinrich Laporte is probably the best centre back there is in England right now. Then let's move on to midfield. We start off with Rodri. Now, he's not quite at the level that Fernandinho is at yet, but there's a reason that people say that he is the next Sergio Busquets, because he's very good at diffusing play before it even begins, and he has a very good eye for a tactical foul, which is very important to how Manchester City play and will be very useful against Liverpool, which is a team with a lot of pace who like to play on the break. Just ahead of him, we have our 2 roaming 8s, which would be Bernardo Silva on the left and Kevin De Bruyne on the right. Don't think there's a lot to argue with over there. And then we have the inverted wingers with Raheem Sterling on the left side and Riyad Mahrez on the right side. And up top, Pep Guardiola has been starting Ferran Torres a lot recently. However, I think against Liverpool, you start someone that is guaranteed to get you a goal, and that man would be Gabriel Jesus. Now that is what the completed team sheet for both teams would look like if I were to start them. For a prediction, I would think there's going to be a lot of goals in this game. Both teams are very good going forward with not a lot in defense, so I'm going to be hopeful and say 4-3 to Manchester City. Manchester City really need to win this game, by the way. Thank you guys for watching, and if you made it this far, you are awesome. Give yourself a pat on the back for me. This is great. And while you're here, why don't you just hit that like button, subscribe to the channel as well, because that helps out a lot. Have a great Sunday night of football. Leave your comments down below with your score predictions, and I will see you